Every single thing that happens today is climate change. Kids in schools are being brainwashed. Parents don't seem willing to strike back. Universities fill the heads of their students with global warming rubbish. This stuff is damaging, it's dangerous, and it's everywhere. We're in a cultural war. Climate change is the new religion. None of these people, not one, can define climate change other than to talk about carbon emissions. They're not carbon emissions at all. Carbon's a chemical element. It exists in things like diamonds and graphite. Carbon is in carbon dioxide, so they mean carbon dioxide emissions. And the burning of coal releases carbon dioxide. So, I might add, do the bushfires. So they must mean that carbon dioxide's a problem. And the world as we know it will end if we don't do something about it. Hang on. Carbon dioxide is 0.04% of the atmosphere. That is over the whole world. Human beings create only 3% of that 0.04% over the whole world. And Australia, human beings, manufacturers, cows breaking wind, bushfires, are responsible for 1.3% of the 3% of the 0.04%. Is anyone seriously suggesting that we should stand the economy on its head, force up energy prices, damage business, jeopardise employment because 0.04% of the atmosphere is carbon dioxide and coal produces carbon dioxide? If we genuinely want to fight for the future of our kids, we're going to have to fight against this intellectual rubbish. And it appears that only a few of us are prepared to step into the ring.
What's going on, everyone? It's Talks Kenny here today. I want to give an analysis about climate change as usual. This is one of my go-to talking points because it seems like no matter how much these climate change scientists or these climate change or these supposed experts sit here and talk about the climate, like Fauci just got exposed. He didn't know what the hell he was talking about. How we know the same thing is not the case for climate change. And the current assumptions that many people have about climate change is because the mainstream media keeps repetition, right? That's what communists like to do. Sorry, I lied. That communists don't do that. Socialists like to do that. If you repeat a lie often enough, eventually people will believe it to be true. Ain't the mainstream media operating in this model? All this information that's out about climate change that counters some of the narratives that people make about global warming. Oh, global warming. Oh my God. But they can't point at one time in history where global warming was actually a problem. But how many times Earth went through ice ages? This clip from this, I don't know who this guy is, but what he says makes sense. And see, this is the problem between the left and the right. The left, they attack the messenger, and the right don't say the truth with and doesn't stand on it. That's the problem. Because right now, all the institutions, all the information giving institutions, this is what I said, our knowledge distribution system is broken because we have these people from an ideological camp that dominates these institutions and then use their standings in these institutions to push their worldview on all of us. And if you're not careful, if you're not self-reflective, if you're not a skeptical person, you can easily just fall along to get along, right? And we're just saying, right? We're just saying, according to this article, which I believe it or not, there has been 41 climate disaster predictions since 1967. Their record so far, 0-0 for 41. That's like coming back from a 3-0 lead in the NBA. You ain't happening anytime soon. But it doesn't derail these people's confidence. And this is why I have a lack of trust for supposed experts, because at the end of the day, the mainstream media is gatekeeping experts that can give a countering evidence and narrative on the climate change. But mainstream media only allow certain climate experts that believe this stuff because they're trying to convince you of something instead of informing you of something. And I'll end off this before I go into my next clip. That climate change is not the biggest, climate change is not a threat to human survival. Climate danger is. What is climate danger? What's the difference between climate danger and climate change? Climate danger is essentially, hey, if the change of this climate, does it affect the survivability of human beings? And can human beings adapt to this new climate? That's why climate change is a nothing burger. But if you leave Earth at its original state, Earth in its original state is a danger to human beings. Human beings' survival depends on them affecting the environment around them. The house we're in, the shelter over our head, the clothes we wear. In our natural state, we will die in nature. But people are trying to pretend that as if the climate is 2 degrees hotter, all of a sudden we're supposed to be freaking out over this. And honestly, climate change is just another means to sow discontent, to give a context for people to have power. I'm done rambling. Let's take a look at this clip.
Carbon dioxide contents of the atmosphere up to hundreds of times higher than now, and we see that we didn't have runaway global warming. Of course we had climate change, it's quite natural, it happens all the time, but what we did have is 6 major ice ages, and there is no correlation over geological time between carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and temperature. In fact, it is the past that shows us that carbon dioxide does not drive global warming. So I argue in this book that we have a fundamental fallacy, and that's emissions, that emissions do not drive global warming.
As you can see, climate change has nothing to do with actual science, right? Another post that I found that actually helps highlight a point that I'm trying to make here. It's never been anything to do with the 0.04% of CO2 emissions or anything else from the actual realm of actual science. Long ago, climate catastrophizing, catastrophism became a cultural entity, a secular religion. That's what climate change has become. Atheists like to pretend, I don't believe in things I can't see. You believe in climate change, though. Oh, that's science. Is it actual science, or is it just some convoluted, flawed methodology that you called science? Oh, the atmosphere. 2023 was the hottest year ever, Kenny. You look at the numbers, it's only 0.2% higher, 0.2% higher than it was. And also, it just matched 40 years ago? I forgot the time, but it's not actually the hottest time in our history. But that's what they put in front of you. It is undeniable. And religiosity, I believe, is a part of human nature. Humans crave things higher than themselves. And atheists don't want to admit it. It's part of their nature. Seeking out something, seeking out meaning is part of human nature. But atheists like to sit here and condemn religion. Oh my God, religion is so this. But then they don't understand that they themselves are operating off of belief. You believe God doesn't exist. A Christian believe God does exist. The only difference between you and a Christian is actually upfront with their belief, and atheists pretend that it's science. Oh, I'm rational. It's a rationality that allows me to know that God doesn't exist. What's your evidence for it? I don't have none. Oh, so you just believe God doesn't exist. When you think something without any evidence or proof, it's a belief. I don't care about the cope in the comment section. Pushed by elites, such entities convinced emotionally and seek complete control over our lives. It may succeed. Like these people, bro. These climate change people, and you see them. A lot of the ways, like a lot of these kids that believe in climate change, they don't really present themselves well. They present themselves over emotional, very defensive. If you criticize or have some type of skepticism with their worldview, their green deals, and all this stuff, they label you science denier when in fact questioning things is part of science. Yet you're a denier because you challenge the science, you question the science. So the reason I'm making this video is that the climate emergency is no longer a settled science because new studies have come out that challenge or even undermine the global warming myth that many people have been talking about for decades now. But finally, one of these famous institutions that have the cultural weight, because this is the game that leftists like to play. They like to say, Harvard said this. Where do you get your sources from? AKA using an appeal to authority to make their arguments for why we should believe climate change, as if experts haven't been wrong. Have you seen the Fauci video? Have you seen Fauci? Fauci said, I just made it up. The 6 feet, I just made it up. That's your experts? The only thing the experts have is that they have qualifications to make a more, I guess, probable guess about how something should go. It doesn't mean that they know how things will go. Just because you graduated from college doesn't make you an all-knowing being in your subject field matter. It just means you're more likely to know than someone who's not credentialized in your subject matter. That's it. And experts are humans just like us. And I'll give no expert no special consideration just because they got an institution backing them. You can still be wrong. But, I digress. This is why the left don't like critical thinking. And I'm going to keep standing on that point because they really don't. Because when you critically think, you challenge this climate change science. I just mentioned the numbers. 2023 was the hottest year in history, allegedly. And the degree rose by 0.2%. So 20% of 1 degree, and that's the hottest year ever. Oh, I'm shaking in my boots. Oh, I'm very concerned. You got Gen Z making decisions like I don't want to have children because I don't know how the climate is gonna be. The climate is gonna be just fine. And when you're 48 and you find out you can't have kids anymore, you're gonna regret the decision you made. Oh, how can I believe such a stupid thing? We're still here. Everything's still fine. Why didn't I have kids? Because the whole point wasn't about climate change, it's about controlling your behavior. And that's the reality of climate change. But I digress.
So, Alex, we've been told for a long time the climate change emergency is settled science. It looks like it's no longer settled. What happened?
Well, there's a series of 3 new peer-reviewed papers published in major prestigious scientific journals just over the last month or so. And taken together, they completely undermine the alleged scientific consensus on man-made global warming. One of them found that about 40% of the observed warming can be explained away using the urban heat island effect. So to try to summarize that, basically a lot of these thermometers were put out there in an open field, in a rural area. A city was built up around it, and so it gets warmer, obviously, not because there's global warming, but because there's a city around the thermometer. The rest of the warming, they found, can be easily explained using changes in solar activity that NASA has been tracking meticulously for many decades. And so right now, these are in the peer-reviewed literature.
I just want to butt in here. You heard that? Based on how solar reflection happens, aka something outside of our control, outside of our impact, changes the weather. So the hottest year ever could have just been something with the solar flares. Who knows? But they sitting here, oh my God, look, it's 2 degrees higher. We gotta do something. It don't matter what you do. I always joke around during the ice age. What kind of how did we contribute to the ice age happening? If you want to get climate back to its original state, the climate of this whole entire Earth changed. I don't know how many times. At one point, the entire Earth was ice. You want to go back to that kind of climate change? Cold kills more humans than global warming does. So to me, as someone who cares about climate danger, hey, is a climate environment dangerous to my survival? Climate warming is more preferable than the cold. But you want to make it colder. You want to create a climate that's less adapt of keeping humans alive for human flourishing. And this is why I said climate change, clean energy actually means no energy. That's the reality. But these people don't see it. No, actually, I think they do see it, but they're using this stuff. They're using these like typical when they're trying to get you emotional, so you just give up your rights and you just give them control of society. You never notice how all these Green Deals seem to always want to centralize power in the government for a fast change. That's why they have to make it catastrophic, because they're trying to rush you to get into a bad deal, a bad decision. I'm telling you, if socialism ever come into this country, it's because they use climate change or some type of emotional reason to justify it. Because this is not a movie. Tyrants don't come in and say, "Ho ho ho ho, I'm a villain." That's why what the mainstream media is doing to Trump is idiotic. No tyrant in history has ever come into power. Oh my God, he's such a bad guy. He's so obviously bad. They always come, "I'm here to help. I'm here to make your life better. I'll make this country great." Now, some say, "Oh, you can make that argument about Trump. You can make that argument about anybody." You just look at their policies, look at their approach, and say, "Okay, does this policy actually does what he claimed it does?" Because that's what Biden do. That's what Biden was doing. Biden created a weak executive order pretending that he's doing something about the border when all he's doing is decelerating how fast people come into the country. But we're still, the problem is people coming into this country illegally. We don't want no one coming into this country illegally. Do the Remain in Mexico Act. Executive order that Trump had, which he overturned, by the way. That was a more effective policy at securing the border. But instead of doing what works, he want to do it in a certain way where he still benefits from it politically. Those are the kind of people that end up being dictators. Those are the kind of people that end up being authoritarians. Those are the kind of people that end up ushering in socialism, because socialists don't have a moral compass. I made this argument a long time. Like, the left has an anti-religious bias because they understand that religion it conforms upon you a moral compass, for the most part anyway. Atheists pretend they're good people, but they don't understand a lot of their assumptions, a lot of the things they standing on the foundation of giants. A lot of that stuff comes from religion. Atheism by itself doesn't have any moral compass. The only thing an atheist respect is power. That's why atheists is more likely to believe that a child should be allowed to transition than someone who's religious. So based on science, who's more scientific? A Christian, Orthodox Christian, Catholic, or an atheist? Not in this context. Atheists are the least scientific ones, because they understand right now culturally, transgender people have power, they have sway, they have influence. Atheism only respects power. They don't need a book to be moral. They need power and consequences to be moral. And they know there's a consequence if they say, "Oh, men can't be women. Women can't transition to men. Trans woman is not a woman." They know there's consequences for that, so they don't do it. That's what atheists really respect. But they want to sit here and act like, "Oh, I don't need a book to be moral." Yeah, you need laws. You need force to be moral. Who sounds more moral? Or who sounds more good? A person that only needs a book to be moral, or someone who needs the power of law, the state, to be moral? Make it make sense. But I'm done because climate change is a religion. It's a religion. I digress.
And instead of responding to this, you've got the climate establishment going on Twitter and saying these guys are basically poo-poo heads and clowns and deniers. So, at this point, you wonder, do they have a scientific response? Because if they did, they would probably write a peer-reviewed paper to refute the ones that just undermined their claims.
Well, how did they get them in? It's hard to get a peer-reviewed paper when it comes to these topics. What was the kind of hole in the wall that brought this about, so to speak?
You're right. It is very hard to get any peer-reviewed studies in the journals because there's almost like an iron wall blocking this. And we got some insight into this during the ClimateGate scandal in 2009, when a bunch of emails were hacked and leaked to the public, showing a bunch of so-called climate scientists, in fact, some of the leading so-called climate scientists, conspiring to hide their data from other researchers, conspiring to hide the decline in global temperatures, and conspiring to silence any scientists who wouldn't go along with the narrative, keep them out of the...
And you wonder why the alarmism is 0 and 41. You wonder why all the climate predictions are wrong, because they're hiding actual data, because they're trying to augment information so you come to a certain conclusions, because they're not about informing you. They're about convincing you of something, like a religion. But we trust the science, kitty. No, trust the science is a fake narrative that you tell yourself to justify what you're doing. Like I said, it is morally wrong to trick someone, to force someone to do something that you perceive to be good, because that's what it's called. That's called manipulation. If I had to trick you into doing something that end up benefiting all of society, you're still wrong. Because when the person find out that you tricked them, it don't matter if the outcome is good. The emotional response, the accurate response, the expected response is they're gonna revolt against you, because they didn't choose that action of their own free will, because they didn't have all the information in their face. This is what the climate change people are doing, and they think there's gonna be a good outcome at the end of this. Let's get back into the video, because I want to hear more of this, and then we'll end it off with my final thoughts.
The journals, keep them out of TV, media interviews, etc. And so what happened is these papers were just really solid. These three journals that published them, they're not known for being climate denier publications, but the science was very sound. They did one special issue in the journal Climate, for example. They had some guest editors, including Dr. Ned Nikolov, who I wrote about back in 2017. They looked at this. They said, wow, this is correct as best as we can tell. So the peers looked at it, they accepted it, and this is a really prestigious team, Josh. We're talking about almost 40 scientists from around the world. The lead author, Dr. Willie Soon, one of the world's top astrophysicists.
So as you see, he's bragging about, hey, look, these people have the credentials, they have the cultural weight, they have the authority, and their studies came and undermined the climate change. And then he talks about the iron wall, how there's these climate experts that don't agree with the prescriptions or the current narratives around climate change, that gets filtered out or gatekeeped away from the public. This is what I'm saying. There's a flaw in our knowledge distribution system. I think this is why I'm doing this, because I'm trying to spread knowledge. Because at the end of the day, this information is out there. It's just you have to find it. But just because you can't find the information doesn't mean the information does not exist. And this is the game that the left is playing. They're like, hey, look, we control institutions. 98% of journalists are liberals. We're not going to cover anybody that has that can disprove our narrative. I show you countless examples of the left doing this, like journalists doing this. Journalists is the most left-wing profession. What's your argument for that? Look at black on black crime. They don't cover it, even though it's a more common instance than white on black crime. And they definitely don't want to cover black on white crime, which makes up 85% of interracial crimes between white and black people. 85% of the time, the black person is the perpetrator and the white person is the victim. Does the mainstream media cover that? No. Why? Because it goes against their narrative. It goes against what they want to put out into the world. And this is the inherent problem with institutions. This is why trust in the media is down. This is why most Americans believe that media is a threat to America, because they're not giving you accurate information. They're just giving you enough information to come to a conclusion that they want you to have. And then they run on that conclusion. This is why in school, they don't focus on giving you an actual education. This is why the conservatives say that the left doesn't educate, they indoctrinate. This is indoctrination. If you get filtered information, you don't get the complete information with all its nuance and all the subtlety of it. Sorry. You're being led astray. You're being led to have a certain predestined beliefs. And that's pretty much the crux of my argument. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What you guys think about this new study that came out with the climate change studies that kind of disprove this whole global warming narrative that the left has built up their entire campaign, Green New Deals on. And you find, and I just want to hear your thoughts about climate change, because honestly, man-made climate stuff, to me, is at this point is debunked. Like we don't contribute much to the actual climate change, and actually, climate change is normal in my view in the whole history of this planet. But these people want to pretend that this is like an AC unit, and they're like, "Hey, stop taking the thermometer." I digress. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I really do appreciate you guys watching to end the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.